welcome to Sunny with a Chance of Chaos, the podcast that is equal parts optimistic and realistic. Join me as we navigate the ups and downs that everyday life brings. I'm Lindsay, and I'm so glad you're here. So get a coffee, get comfy, and get ready for a little bit of life's chaos. Hey there, welcome back to Sunny with a Chance of Chaos. This last couple weeks has been a little chaotic. Lots of sunshine, a little bit of chaos, both professionally and personally, and admittedly, this episode has been difficult to get to final production. However, I'm happy to be here now. I'm recording, I'm sharing my thoughts with you with a cup of tea and some ideas about how we as human beings connect. I'll start with a story. A few years ago, I was in a long-ish term relationship with a super kind and funny guy who treated me well. We had a lot in common. We loved to socialize together. We loved dance parties in the kitchen. We could talk for hours about our connection and what made it work. And generally, we just enjoyed each other's company. I knew going into the relationship that he and I had differing views on various subjects. I also knew that this person was not a big reader. He wasn't as curious as I was about the arts and psychology and self-improvement or other intellectual kind of based topics. At first, this didn't matter in the least for our relationship, but as time went on, I started to feel like something was missing. We were super attracted to each other. We cared for each other very, very much. So I thought this would be enough. So I'm hanging out with a friend one afternoon by her pool, and I mentioned that I felt I was much more interested in being connected in a more intellectual way than he was, and how that was actually making it difficult for us to take our relationship to a deeper level. So my friend and I talked about how I was getting that cerebral type of connection from other friends, and maybe that was going to be enough. Now, let me state that by no means was this man not smart. He was just smart in different ways than I was. There was a disconnect in the things that we were interested in exploring. There were lots of things we couldn't see eye to eye on in the big picture. And eventually, this disconnect brought me to the point where I ended the relationship. I was upset, understandably, and it drove me to really get curious about the quality and the texture of my relationships and my friendships. I wanted an explanation for why they are all so different and serve me in different ways, and why I needed some types of connection from my partner and I could get various types of connection from various different friendships. I was asking myself, what makes a friendship or relationship stick and stay connected? So I did some digging and I discovered so very much about how people connect. And that's what we're going to talk about today. When I say connect, I obviously don't mean what social platform or texting app they use. I mean how they really connect, through what channels and interests and other less tangible means. As I'm sure you have discerned if you've listened to any of my other episodes, I'm an extrovert. This means I gain my energy from being around other people. And so I surround myself with lots and lots and lots of great people. My stories from previous episodes about my friends and all my experiences with them surely indicate that fact loud and clear. I'm also still a card-carrying member of the fascinating and at times dreadful middle-aged dating pool. So I have some experiences with various connections in that realm as well, as my initial story would indicate. I sometimes say nothing feels real until I've shared it with my person or till I've shared it with my best friend. But not all friendships and relationships are created equally. You probably have people in your life whom with you have coffee once or twice a year for a quick newsy catch up, and others who you connect with daily, and you share all your inner thoughts and feelings, and you feel like you wouldn't be able to survive if they weren't in your life. Maybe you are in a relationship and the two of you are deeply connected emotionally and you talk about these emotions openly. There are about 1 million ways in which people connect, but lucky for us, pop psychology's narrowed it down into 5 main types. They are called the 5 intimacies, and they are as follows: physical, emotional, intellectual, social, and spiritual. Now, in the title of this episode, you can see I've renamed them, for the purposes of this podcast, the 5 types of connection. I did this because the word intimacy freaks people out. It makes them cringe. And I wanted people to get as curious as I am about the ways in which humans connect. And I didn't want to scare anyone off with that uncomfortable word, intimacy. There's often a misunderstanding that intimacy is strictly physical or sexual. And as I learned, this is not the case. So during the episode, I'll use the words connection and intimacy kind of interchangeably, and you'll know what I mean. Also, there's a bonus track. I'm going to add another 6th type of connection or intimacy, one which I only recently discovered for myself. Also, I want to preface this whole topic with the understanding that these intimacies are usually affiliated with romantic partnerships. And while we can certainly apply them to romantic relationships, they are not restricted to romantic relationships. As you're listening here, I want you to think personally about them in terms of whatever relationships are relevant to you and your life. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's your best friend, your wife, your boyfriend. It doesn't matter. I want you to think of the people you're connected with as we're talking here and try to consider the ways in which you're connected as I go through the 5 intimacies in a little bit more detail here. Let's start with the most obvious one, physical. This is the one we're all the most familiar with, and certainly when it comes to our romantic partners, it's often associated with sex, and yes, that's definitely a part of it. However, physical intimacy also includes other kinds of touch like snuggles and hand-holding and hugs and kisses. You can have physical intimacy with your friends, your family, your kids. This particular type of connection is not necessarily restricted to your romantic partner. Granted, it's less likely to be found with your coworkers, but you do you. That's cool. Physical touch is a pretty important element in a relationship, and when done with mutuality, it can lead to really strong feelings of like deep connection between two people. Next up is emotional intimacy. This is related to a sharing of deep, meaningful emotions. It's part of a relationship or friendship that requires trust and vulnerability and honesty. There is no room for toxic positivity in emotional intimacy. Connecting emotionally and building emotional intimacy can be done through sharing your feelings for that person, about that other person, or about something else that's deeply personal to you. This connection can be practiced in moments of joy as well as moments of despair. And when you're emotionally connected with your person in a healthy way, there's a trust built that lets you know that they will be available for all your big feelings and they'll hold space for them with you. Third is intellectual intimacy. This is a level of connection that stems from shared interests and curiosity, opinions, learning, problem-solving, questioning. If you are healthily connected with someone on an intellectual level, there is a safety and an interest to discuss deep topics, opinions, and thoughts about the world, about art and other creative outlets, politics, films, books. It goes on and on and on. It can be achieved through a simple discussion about a book. You can go see a movie, wander through a museum together. This particular type of intimacy is actually one of my favorites. I find deep, curious, intellectual conversation to be extremely stimulating, and also a big vocabulary is a surefire turn on for me. Fourth, we have spiritual intimacy. Spirituality is deeply personal. and it's unique to every human. So this type of intimacy is not about a joint belief in a God or a dedication to one particular religion, though these things might come into play. Generally speaking, it's the extent to which you and another person can discuss things that are beyond the tangible aspects of life. This might be religion, crystals, angels, chakras, life after death, or it could be your experience on your yoga mat on Saturday morning. There is a general theme of a deeper sort of meaning of life that you feel safe sharing with another person. Lastly, we're going to talk about social intimacy. This is the how do you like to spend your time connection. To what degree do you and the other person share each other's interests and spend time together? Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Let's be clear, it's not about doing everything together or agreeing on how you want to spend all of your minutes. Social intimacy is about spending time together that's meaningful and fun and is balanced with time apart. So here I went, I gathered all this information, I did all this research, but I was only slightly further ahead in figuring out what made my friendships and relationships tick. I had to figure out which of these was essential for me in my various relationships and what to think when certain types of connections were missing, what to do about that. What I discovered, honestly, is that human relationships are endlessly complex, in case you didn't already know that. So, what type and how many of these intimacies do you need to have to keep a relationship alive, or a friendship for that matter? In particular, in my dating life, I have figured out what intimacies I need and what are deal breakers for me if they're missing. But most importantly, what I figured out is that one person cannot give you everything you need in all 5 areas. You can be fulfilled in all the various areas by a number of different people, be it friends or colleagues or family members. When we seek out partnership or friendship, we cannot expect one person to be able to provide all the things we need to make us feel rooted and connected. It is so rare in my life that one friend or partner has ever been able to provide all the elements of intimacy for me in one single package. This is why we need to decide, or maybe just uncover, what each person can give us. Invest in those areas of the relationship. Just the same way your friends might not want to physically snuggle on the couch with you while you're watching a movie, maybe your partner is not interested in discussing the sacral chakra opening exercises you've been working on. Or maybe your pickleball partner doesn't want to talk about their feelings, but they sure do want to share a beer after your round. It's okay for your people to provide some, not all, of these elements. The key thing is deciding if the intimacies you do connect on are enough to keep that relationship meaningful for you. If you're constantly frustrated that your group of friends is only interested in going out drinking all weekend, but you're super interested in doing a yoga retreat, then maybe you can just own that those are the friends who you have a solid social intimacy with and continue with that with them, while seeking out other spiritually like-minded people who might be more interested in chanting Shavasana for a weekend. You don't need to get rid of those other friends. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You just get another baby. When it comes to romantic partnership, I'm not going to tell you which intimacies to look for, which ones are priorities and which ones are deal breakers, because that's actually super personal and everyone will have a different profile when it comes to that. What I do know is that it's possible to have your cup filled in various areas by friends, kids, family, etc., as well as your romantic partner. Maybe you and your partner have great physical connection, you love to travel together, you do emotional check-ins every Sunday morning, but you cannot agree on any books or movies to discuss, and you have a hard time talking to them about what happens to us after we die. If you feel fulfilled by this relationship, then maybe it's the perfect relationship for you. Maybe in order to seek out what is lacking spiritually and intellectually, you go to a church group and join a book club. Maybe those intimacies that are lacking in your partnership can be fulfilled for you in other areas of your life. This is why we build networks and friendships and communities. I've decided it takes a village to raise a middle-aged woman. It really does. I have an analogy I use for this very concept. Each of us holds a proverbial deck of cards that encompasses our entire selves. It represents our whole self, our emotional load, our social load, our vulnerabilities, our need for deep conversation, support, laughter, all of it. Now, if you consider that each of these decks of cards is pretty thick, it is a lot to ask of one person to be the recipient of them every time we need to deal them out. Imagine you're playing a game of cards and the entire deck gets dealt to you and you're trying to hold it all and trying to keep it all straight. Eventually, your hand cramps and you drop the cards. The same thing happens when we deal our personal stuff to just one person. It's a lot for them to have all the suits in one hand and keep holding all of it. So deal the social suit to your coworker and go hit balls at the driving range after work. Then deal the emotional suit to your girlfriend and text her, I love you. Then head into the forest with your best friend and root your feet into the earth and talk about your connection with the universe. No one person can be all of these things for us, nor should we expect them to be. It's nice to have a few different players at the table to deal our cards to. To continue with this card analogy, if you perpetually deal the intellectual suit to the friend who has no interest in being curious about the world or being introspective, you'll ultimately just end up frustrated. This is why I ended the relationship I referenced earlier. That connection and reciprocity was missing for me. And I kept trying to make that intellectual connection with him to no avail, and it left me feeling really lonely within the context of the relationship. So instead, try to deal each suit to the people in your lives who you know will hold them securely for you and deal their cards back to you in return. Okay, I promised you I would talk about the sixth intimacy that I've discovered. I'm going to add it to the list right now. I know this to be true in my life. There is such a thing as energetic intimacy. You know that feeling when someone walks into the room and there's a magnetic pull that draws your attention to them, or that friend who finishes your sentences or seems to always text you at the exact same moment that you're texting them? There is an intangible draw, an invisible string, if you will, thanks for that language, Taylor, between some people that can only be described as energetic, and it does not require words or actions to be experienced. I think sometimes we try to put too many words out there to describe why we love someone or why we're connected to somebody. Sometimes there are no words to explain it. And I think this is where energetic intimacy comes in. I recently had someone enter my life who taught me about the importance of energetic intimacy. There's an exchange that happens without conversation, without physical contact. I have it with a few people in my life, as it turns out, and it's a little woo-woo, I know, but I genuinely believe that everything and everyone on this planet vibrates at various frequencies. And sometimes, just sometimes, you meet someone whose frequency matches up with yours. If you experience this in a new friend or maybe even a potential partner, I suggest you lean in. It might be worth exploring. Okay, welcome to the Stacks. I found in my research that the leading expert in the area of the 5 intimacies is named Beth Darling. Her book, The 5 Kinds of Intimacy, How to Keep Your Love Alive, gets great ratings, and it's been described as an easy read and a great resource. I also found a website called All Points North, which featured an article in 2022 called The 5 Types of Intimacy Every Relationship Needs. It gives more in-depth descriptions of the types of ways that we connect with our people. Lastly, there's a little 11-minute YouTube video that has some great ideas about intimacy and friendship in particular. It's by Thomas Frank, and it's called How to Build Closer Friendships. He talks about the kinds of things required to take your casual friendships into deeper, more meaningful ones, if that's something you want to do. Finally, my gratitude moment today goes to my friend S, who inspired me to dig into the concept of intimacy and connection in that conversation by the pool we had so many summers ago. And again, we had that conversation very recently. She was also present for the first iteration of the dealing your cards analogy. I am always so grateful for the beautiful and organic conversations that happen with my friends and loved ones. These are the conversations that typically kickstart a thought process that typically leads to an episode. So thank you. I couldn't do this without you. Have a great week. And when the chaos hits, don't forget to turn your face towards the sun. See you next time. Bye.